Once upon a time, in a quaint village nestled deep within an ancient forest, there lived a little girl known as Little Red Riding Hood. She was cherished not only for the vibrant red cloak her grandmother had lovingly made for her, but also for her fearless spirit and kind heart. One sunny morning, Little Red Riding Hood's mother called her into the kitchen. "My dear," she said, handing her a basket filled with freshly baked bread, sweet butter, and a jar of honey. "Grandmother isn't feeling well. Would you be a brave girl and take these goodies to her?" Little Red Riding Hood's eyes sparkled with excitement. She loved her grandmother dearly and couldn't wait to see her. "Of course, Mother," she replied with a nod. "I'll set off right away." With her red cloak fluttering in the breeze, Little Red Riding Hood skipped through the forest path, humming a cheerful tune. The birds chirped merrily above her, and the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting playful patterns on the ground. Little did she know that someone else was watching her every move with hungry eyes. Deep within the shadows of the trees, a cunning wolf had spotted Little Red Riding Hood. His stomach growled at the thought of the delicious treats she carried in her basket. Ah, he grinned to himself. What a delightful meal she would make. The wolf, with his sleek fur blending into the forest, stealthily crept closer to Little Red Riding Hood. He knew he had to be clever to catch her unaware. As she paused to pick a bouquet of wildflowers for her grandmother, the wolf approached her, his voice gentle and friendly. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," he greeted her with a sly smile. Startled, but unafraid, Little Red Riding Hood looked up and smiled back at the wolf. "Good day to you too, Mr. Wolf," she replied politely. She had been taught to respect all creatures of the forest, unaware of the wolf's true intentions. "And where might you be going on this lovely day?" the wolf asked, trying to sound innocent. "I'm off to visit my grandmother," Little Red Riding Hood answered cheerfully, holding up her basket. "She's feeling a bit poorly, so I'm taking her these goodies to make her feel better." My, the wolf said, his eyes gleaming with hunger as he glanced at the basket. "What a thoughtful granddaughter you are. But my dear, don't you think it's dangerous to walk through these woods all alone?" Little Red Riding Hood shook her head, her curls bouncing. "Oh no, Mr. Wolf," she said with a giggle. "I know these woods like the back of my hand. Besides, I'm not afraid. The birds and the trees are my friends." The wolf's stomach growled louder, but he kept his voice gentle. "Well then, Little Red Riding Hood," he said, his mind racing with a plan. "Why don't you take the longer path through the woods? It's much prettier, and I'm sure your grandmother would love to receive such a thoughtful surprise." Little Red Riding Hood thought for a moment, her brow furrowed in consideration. She trusted the wolf's words, unaware of his hidden hunger. "That does sound nice," she finally agreed with a smile. "Thank you, Mr. Wolf. I'll take the longer path then. Goodbye." "Goodbye, Little Red Riding Hood," the wolf said softly, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. As she skipped down the path, the wolf disappeared into the shadows, plotting his next move. Little did Little Red Riding Hood know that danger lurked closer than she could ever imagine. As she ventured deeper into the forest along the longer path, the sunlight began to wane, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The trees whispered tales of caution, but Little Red Riding Hood skipped along, her heart light with thoughts of her grandmother. Meanwhile, the wolf, having taken a shortcut, arrived at Grandmother's cottage well ahead of Little Red Riding Hood. He knocked on the door with a gentle tap. "Who is it?" came Grandmother's frail voice from inside. "It's me, dear Grandmother, Little Red Riding Hood," replied the wolf, mimicking the girl's voice as best as he could. "Oh, come in, my dear," Grandmother called out, believing it was her beloved granddaughter. The wolf entered the cottage, his eyes scanning the room greedily. He found Grandmother lying in her bed, her knitting needles clutched in her hands. "Grandmother, what big ears you have," he exclaimed, trying to contain his excitement. "The better to hear you with, my dear," Grandmother replied weakly, smiling weakly from her bed. "Grandmother, what big eyes you have," the wolf continued, moving closer. "The better to see you with, my dear," Grandmother replied, squinting as the wolf stepped closer. "Grandmother, what big teeth you have," the wolf exclaimed, unable to contain his hunger.
"The better to eat you with, my dear." With that, the wolf pounced, swallowing Grandmother in one gulp. He settled himself into Grandmother's bed, pulling the covers up to his chin and waiting eagerly for Little Red Riding Hood to arrive. Back on the forest path, Little Red Riding Hood had picked a beautiful bouquet of wildflowers and was nearing her grandmother's cottage. She hummed a merry tune, completely unaware of the danger lurking just ahead. As she approached the cottage, she noticed the door slightly ajar. "Grandmother, I'm here," she called out cheerfully, pushing the door open wider. The sight that greeted her froze her in her tracks. There lay her grandmother, swallowed whole by the wolf, who now lay in Grandmother's bed, his belly swollen with both treats. "Oh, Grandmother!" Little Red Riding Hood gasped, fear and confusion clouding her face. "What big ears you have!"
"The better to hear you with, my dear," the wolf replied, trying to imitate Grandmother's voice. Little Red Riding Hood moved closer, still puzzled. "But Grandmother, what big eyes you have! The better to see you with, my dear," the wolf responded, licking his lips. "Grandmother," Little Red Riding Hood hesitated, her heart pounding with suspicion. "What big teeth you have!" The wolf grinned wickedly, his disguise crumbling as he prepared to pounce on the unsuspecting girl. But Little Red Riding Hood, quick-witted and brave, suddenly understood the danger she was in. With a shout, she darted out of the cottage, racing back into the forest with the wolf hot on her heels. Through the twisting trees and over tangled roots, Little Red Riding Hood ran for her life. She could hear the wolf's heavy breath behind her, feel his hunger-driven determination closing in. But just as she thought she couldn't run any farther, she stumbled upon a clearing where the sunlight streamed down like a beacon of hope. Gathering her courage, Little Red Riding Hood turned to face the wolf, her eyes blazing with defiance. "You won't catch me, Mr. Wolf," she cried out, her voice echoing through the forest. "I'm not afraid of you." The wolf snarled, lunging towards her with jaws wide open. But before he could reach her, a group of woodcutters, who had heard her cries, burst through the trees, brandishing their axes and shouting loudly. Startled, the wolf turned tail and fled back into the depths of the forest, never to bother anyone again. With the wolf gone, Little Red Riding Hood collapsed into the arms of the woodcutters, her heart still racing from the adrenaline. They listened intently as she recounted her harrowing adventure, from her encounter with the wolf to finding her grandmother in danger. Together, they returned to Grandmother's cottage, where they found Grandmother shaken, but safe. They shared a warm meal of bread, butter, and honey, comforting each other with tales of bravery and lessons learned. And from that day on, Little Red Riding Hood never wandered into the forest alone again, always mindful of the dangers that could lurk in its shadows. And so, with courage, wit, and the help of friends, Little Red Riding Hood's tale became a story of bravery and caution, teaching all who heard it the importance of trust, awareness, and the strength found